Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. This is Last Century Tonight. I'm your host, Gavin Fortenberry. Let's get right into it with a quick recap of U.S. history. William Lloyd Garrison, or as some may know him, that tall white guy at the front of a Black Lives Matter march who doesn't really know what he's doing, but at least he's trying. Anyways, Garrison was born in Newburyport, Massachusetts in 1805, where he grew up in extreme poverty with his siblings and was abandoned by his father at just the age of 3. This made Garrison have to work as a child, selling wood and candy to help support his family, since his father was their main source of income and he left. But this did not hold him back. It may have even made him stronger. At just the age of 13, he began a 7-year apprenticeship with a renowned writer, which led him to start his own newspaper at age 20, which he called the Newbury Free Press. Unfortunately, the Newbury Free Press failed due to a lack of subscribers, but this helped encourage him to keep writing about issues going on at that time period. He moved to Boston to work on the National Philanthropist, which further helped him develop his passion for activism and journalism, two things commonly portrayed by our current president as fake news. He then later took up a job as an editor for the Genius of Emancipation, an anti-slavery newspaper based out of Vermont, which allowed him to write about slavery and what really began to make himself known as an abolitionist. In addition to being involved with the abolitionist movement, Garrison was also an advocate for women's rights and was involved in the temperance movement, which sought for the moderation in the consumption of alcohol because of its negative effects on behavior and judgment. Historically, white settlers have been known to give alcohol to groups of people they want to weaken, like Native Americans, and this led to a pattern of systemic alcoholism in other groups as well. This was one of the many factors which inspired Garrison to become a part of the temperance movement. But overall, Garrison is still best known for his contributions to the abolitionist movement. As a devout Christian, he had immense religious motivation to destroy slavery. When he heard stories of the way slaves were being treated, he felt it went against Christian values as well as moral values, and he wanted to stop it. After realizing the current society he was associated with went against his values, he was inspired to make one of his main contributions to the abolitionist movement with his writings in an anti-slavery newspaper that he started, which he named The Liberator. In The Liberator, he wrote about how immoral slavery was and detailed descriptions of the way slaves were treated as well as philosophical reasoning against slavery. This newspaper made him known as one of the most radical and anti-slavery advocates in America, which he was. In one of his writings, he said, "I am in earnest. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will not retreat a single inch. And I will be heard," which basically meant he wanted to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. While the majority of the newspaper's subscribers were African Americans, it quickly spread to lots of different groups of people due to its controversial subject matter. This allowed it to keep publishing new issues, unlike Garrison's first newspaper, which failed. Garrison vehemently viewed the Constitution as being beneficial for slave owners and just pro-slavery in general. He even publicly burned a copy of the Constitution in 1854 to show how much disdain he had for it being pro-slavery. As he gained more followers, he soon combined forces with Frederick Douglass, a former slave, to write over 30 different speeches against the Union, in which he argued for the separation of pro-slavery states and anti-slavery states. He continued to write about these ideas for many years, causing an increased tension between pro-slavery advocates and anti-slavery advocates. His writings brought up more and more radical ideas over time, eventually leading to his demanding for all slaves to be set free. He thought this was the only viable solution to fix the inhumane treatment of slaves that he was so unsettled by, and many of his readers agreed as a result of his successful strategy of appealing to morality with detailed descriptions of how horribly the slaves were being treated. But not everyone agreed with his writings. He was often attacked and harassed by angry mobs, and at one time was nearly killed in Boston for being dragged in the street. But soon his writings gathered the attention of high-ranking government officials and contributed to the ongoing debate about how the federal government and how states should handle slavery. Unsatisfied with current policy choices made, he argued for the North to secede from the southern slave-owning states, influencing many people to agree with him, which was one of the many factors that led to the Civil War. Eventually, Garrison lived to see the successful influence of his writings at the end of the Civil War in 1865, where the 13th Amendment was put into place and slavery was outlawed in the United States. Yeah! Oh man, what a guy. And now, this.